The night was wet and heavy in Baton Rouge, Louisiana. Summer punished the city streets, making the air almost unbreathable. Jamal Carter, a 34-year-old black lawyer, calmly drove his black sedan down a dimly lit highway, returning from a dinner with clients. He was wearing a dark blue suit and a slightly loosened tie. The day had been long but productive. He had just closed a major racial profiling case against a police department. In the passenger seat, his younger sister, Tiana Carter, 22 years old, was busy on her cell phone, laughing at a video she had received. Her curly hair was pulled back into a high bun, and she wore a denim jacket over a light dress. "You know what's funny?" Tiana said, still laughing. "You spend the whole day prosecuting racist people, and then you still drive alone in the southern United States, as if nothing was going to happen." Jamal smiled, but without much humor. "I would prefer my work not to be necessary, but look where we live." She nodded, aware that each case her brother took was just a symptom of a larger problem. The two were driving along the almost deserted highway when they saw something that made Jamal's stomach turn. A police raid. 2 police cars with rotating lights were parked on the shoulder, while 3 white officers made selective stops on passing cars. Jamal took a deep breath. Shit. Tiana stopped looking at her cell phone and looked at him. What it was? This isn't just any blitz. She frowned and looked around. The few cars that passed continued normally, except for an older SUV, driven by a black man who was already being forcibly searched by the police. "They're only stopping black people," muttered Tiana. Jamal kept his eyes fixed on the road, trying to control the rising tension. He knew exactly how this could end. As their car approached, one of the officers, still holding a riot baton, pointed at them and motioned for them to pull over. Jamal's heart beat faster. "Stay calm. Don't make sudden movements." He slowed down and pulled over to the shoulder. As soon as it stopped, 2 white police officers they approached, quickly. The first, a large man with shaved hair and a hostile expression, hit the roof of the car hard. The other, thin and with a mocking smile, was already analyzing the occupants like a predator observing prey. "Get out of the car! Now!" ordered the first, without even asking for the documents. Jamal kept his hands on the steering wheel. "Officer, is there any reason for this approach?" The burly cop leaned into the driver's window, his face mere inches from Jamal's. The smell of cheap cigarettes permeated his uniform. "The reason is that I ordered it. Get out of the car." Tiana looked at her brother, alarmed. "This is absurd. We didn't do anything." The skinny officer slammed his baton against the side of the car, making her jump. "I said leave, or would you prefer us to take it away from you by force?" Jamal closed his eyes for a second. He knew this game. He knew that any resistance, no matter how small, could cost him his life. But what those police officers didn't know, it was who he really was. And most importantly, who was coming after them. Jamal Carter let out a long sigh before slowly opening the car door. Every move needed to be calculated. He knew how these situations ended for unarmed black men in the United States. "Hands on the hood," ordered the burly policeman as soon as Jamal stood up. "Just tell me what the suspect is, officer. I'm a lawyer. I know the law." The thin policeman laughed. "Ah, we have a know-it-all here. Lawyer, huh? Then you should know that the system doesn't work the way you think it does." Meanwhile, Tiana hesitated before getting out of the car. She held her cell phone tightly, her fingers shaking as she tried to start a live broadcast. But before he could do anything, the thin police officer came forward and snatched the device from his hand. "This stays with me," he said, putting the phone in his pocket. Tiana's eyes widened. "You can't do that!" The burly police officer approached her, his body blocking her view of the highway. "I can do whatever I want. Now, hands on the car." Jamal swallowed hard when he saw the way the police surrounded his sister. He knew that look. It wasn't just an abuse of power. It was something dirtier, more perverse. "Tiana, do what they say." His voice was low, controlled, but full of tension. She reluctantly turned around and placed her hands on the hood. The road was deserted. No witnesses, no camera. Just the rustle of leaves in the wind and the distant sound of a police radio screeching. Jamal felt sweat running down the back of his neck. Everything inside him screamed that he needed to do something. But he knew that a single false move could make this his last day alive. But on the other side of the highway, a dark car had stopped on the shoulder. Someone was watching. The driver slowly opened the door and stepped onto the road. He was not a lawyer. He was no ordinary civilian. He was the federal prosecutor who worked at the Baton Rouge courthouse, and at that moment, he was holding his badge in his hand. Things were about to change. The sound of the car door slamming echoed on the deserted road. The federal prosecutor, Malcolm Reed, a 45-year-old black man, tall and with an imposing presence, walked slowly towards the blitz. His dark suit contrasted with the red and blue lights of the police cars. He held his badge at chest level, his sharp eyes analyzing the scene in front of him. "Is there a problem here, officers?" The two police officers looked at each other, surprised by the interruption. The robust man, visibly irritated, turned around first. "That's none of your business. Circulate." Malcolm didn't move. "Well, considering that I'm a federal prosecutor and that you just took a citizen's cell phone without justification, I think this, and from my account." The police officers' faces changed. The thin man took a step back, trying to hide his nervousness. The stalwart, however, stood firm. "Federal prosecutor, huh?" His voice carried mockery, but his posture was more rigid. "We're not doing anything other than our jobs." Malcolm raised an eyebrow. "Does your job involve selectively stopping black drivers? Attacking citizens without reason? Confiscate cell phones?" The burly policeman clenched his jaw. "Look, doctor, if you want to talk, we can resolve this another way." But this lawyer and his sister were acting suspiciously. Malcolm crossed his arms. Suspects of countryside, exactly? The silence that followed was revealing. Jamal finally turned to face the officers. Her heart was still hammering in her chest, but seeing Malcolm there made a glimmer of hope emerge. "So, officers, what is the reason for the approach?" The thin police officer took a deep breath, trying to regain control of the situation. "Let's resolve this at the police station. They come with us." Malcolm let out a short laugh. "No, they won't. I've already called the FBI. You know about the Department of Civil Rights, right? Their people loves cases like this." The reaction was instantaneous. The burly policeman turned pale. The thin man swore softly. The distant siren of a new vehicle cut through the silence on the road. Now the tables had turned. The sound of the siren intensified as the new vehicle approached. The thin policeman looked at the burly man, waiting for an answer. He, in turn, clenched his fists, trying to maintain a posture of control, but his restless look showed that he knew what was coming. Jamal felt his breathing stabilize for the first time since the approach began. He looked at his sister, who still had her hands on the hood of the car. "Tiana, everything is fine now. You can turn around." She hesitated, still suspicious, but followed her brother's words. As soon as she faced the police officers, she saw fear growing in their eyes. This time, they were cornered. Malcolm took a step forward without looking away from the burly man. "Then? Anything to say before the FBI car arrives?" The burly policeman finally spoke, his voice less assured than before. "This is going too far. It was just a routine approach." "Routine?" Malcolm repeated, crossing his arms. "Then why didn't the other white cars that passed by here not stop? Why did they take the girl's cell phone? Why did they use unnecessary force against a man who committed no crime? The burly policeman did not respond. The thin man started to sweat. The approaching police car finally stopped next to them. 2 FBI agents got out, a white man and a black woman, both wearing bulletproof vests written on FBI civil rights. The woman took a quick look at Jamal and Tiana before turning to Malcolm. "We received your complaint, Prosecutor Reed. Do we have evidence?" Malcolm took his cell phone out of his pocket and showed a video. "Yes, I started recording the moment these 2 police officers removed this black man from the car without justification. We also have witnesses." The FBI agent looked at the traffic stop officers. Names and license plates now. The thin police officer opened his mouth to protest, but the burly one placed a hand on his shoulder, signaling him to stay quiet. Jamal finally felt like he could breathe. For the first time, police were not in control of the situation. Tiana, still shaking, took the cell phone from the agent's hands and looked at her brother. "They're going to pay for this, right?" Jamal nodded slowly. "Go, Tiana. This time, yes, they will." But he knew the fight wasn't over yet. The real battle was just beginning. The air felt electrified as FBI agents surrounded the scene. The burly police officer looked around, realizing they were cornered. The thin, pale man took an involuntary step back. "That's a misunderstanding," he muttered. "No one here has committed any crime." Malcolm Reed let out a dry laugh. "You think the system will always protect you, don't you?" Jamal crossed his arms, his gaze fixed on the police officers. For the first time that night, he felt that he didn't need to lower his head, that he didn't need to hold back to avoid being killed. This time, they were the ones cornered. The black FBI agent stepped forward, pulling out a notebook. "Let's simplify this. If you're smart, you'll cooperate now. We need the full names of you and your direct superiors. We will also need patrol cameras." The burly police officer shook his head, laughing humorlessly. "What if we refuse?" The agent didn't blink. "Then I make a call to the Department of Justice and make sure this squad car is surrounded in less than 5 minutes. The thin man swallowed dryly. Jamal watched the scene, but his gaze soon shifted to his sister. Tiana was shaking slightly, still scared. He knew that even if those police officers were arrested, the mark of violence they almost suffered it wouldn't disappear so easily. Tiana finally found her voice. "I want to report each one of them." The burly police officer sneered. "This will disappear in the reports. No police officer is arrested for a traffic stop." Malcolm smiled. "It depends on the police officer. And it depends on the case." The FBI agent took a pair of handcuffs from her belt. "From what I saw in the video, there is a basis for immediate arrest for abuse of authority. You are both in custody." The thin officer tried to protest, but before he could finish his sentence, he felt the cold metal of the handcuffs close around his wrists. The robust man resisted, but a second agent came from behind and forced him to kneel. For the first time, they were the detainees. Jamal's heart pounded as he watched the police officers being taken away. But a bitter feeling was still inside him. He knew this was a momentary victory. Tiana turned to her brother. "Do you think this really changes anything?" Jamal pursed his lips, looking at the flashing lights of the police cars. "Today it changed. Tomorrow we continue fighting." But deep down, he knew. This war never had a real end. The sound of sirens faded as the handcuffed officers were loaded into the FBI squad car. The road, which previously looked like a battlefield, was now silent, but Jamal felt like the weight of that night was still on his shoulders. Tiana crossed her arms, looking at the dust that rose as the squad cars sped up to take the attackers away. So that's it? They get arrested, and tomorrow there are more people like them doing the same thing? Jamal sighed. The system was made to protect them, Tiana. But today, at least, we managed to break through that barrier. Malcolm Reed adjusted his suit, looking at his brothers with a serious expression. "Don't think it ends here. This case will gain attention. The FBI has the power to file federal charges against these officers, but only if you are willing to take it further." Jamal exchanged glances with his sister. He knew what it meant. Exposure, reprisals, a fight against a structure bigger than themselves. But he also knew that not reporting meant let everything stay the same. Tiana took a deep breath. "I will not remain silent. I want this to be exposed. I want everyone to know what happened." Malcolm nodded. "In that case, I recommend that. You prepare. You will be attacked in the media, you will be discredited, and the local police will try to protect theirs. But if you stay strong, we can turn this into a case that changes things." Jamal looked at the dark road, thinking of all the times he had heard similar stories. But that night, the story, it was his. He took a deep breath and reached out to the prosecutor. "Let's go ahead." The handshake sealed more than an agreement. He sealed a commitment. That fight was far from over. But now, they were ready to face it. 3 months later. The city of Baton Rouge, it was different. The case of Jamal and Tiana Carter didn't disappear like so many others. Thanks to media pressure and FBI involvement, the two officers were officially charged with abuse of authority, inappropriate conduct, and violation of civil rights. The complaint gained strength when other black drivers came forward to report similar approaches made by the same police team. The Department of Justice opened an investigation into patterns of racial discrimination within local police, and the case became national. Jamal Carter, once a lawyer working quietly on racial injustice cases, was now invited for interviews on national networks, pushing for systemic changes. Tiana, once just a college student, became an activist. His live stream from that night, recovered by forensic technicians after cops tried to delete it, was millions of views. His face appeared in protests across the country, and his voice echoed in speeches demanding justice. But the battle was not easy. Jamal received anonymous threats. Tiana was harassed online. Some politicians and commentators tried to paint the brothers as agitators who wanted to tarnish the reputation of the police. But none of this made them back down. Not court, Malcolm Reed left no room for error. He used every detail of that night. Every piece of evidence, every failure of the police officers. The jury didn't take long to make a decision. The two police officers were sentenced to prison terms. The police chief was forced to resign. The city announced changes to its police approach policies. But Jamal knew that this was only a temporary victory. The day after the trial, he met with Malcolm and Tiana at a cafe. "You won, brother," said Tiana, holding a newspaper with the headline, "Police Officers Convicted in Historic Racism Case." Jamal took a sip of coffee and shook his head. "No, Agent won, but that doesn't mean it's over." Malcolm smiled slightly. "You know you're a target now, don't you? This wasn't just a legal victory, it was a political victory. A lot of people won't forget it." Jamal stared at his reflection in the coffee cup. "Great. This means we are bothering the right people." Tiana smiled, determined. "And we still have a lot of work to do." The fight never ended. But that day, they had won a battle, and they were ready for the next one. End.